Well, I really screwed up. Today, I'm going to get real with you guys. I mess up a lot, probably more than I should. And today, I want to talk about some of my biggest Etsy mess ups to give you guys an idea of how much I screw up and just let you know that I'm a real person. Messing up, not doing the right thing sometimes is part of the journey. It's part of the process. So it's good to embrace it and learn from it. And I know a lot of people don't want to talk about messing up and doing things wrong and the fact that they're not perfect, but we're all far from it. We're all going to make those mistakes, especially when it comes to business, online business. So let's dive in today and talk about my mess ups. Hey everyone, what is going on? Hopefully you guys are doing awesome. I'm LL, your host of the Handmade and Beyond podcast. Glad to be back with you guys. As usual, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. I value your viewership, your listenership, however you say that. I appreciate you guys tuning into the show each and every week. Before we get started, I have something for you guys. If you have not downloaded my Black Friday playbook, please do it sooner than later so that you guys can plan and launch a successful Black Friday sale, Black Friday promotions, and get that sales boost, the revenue boost that I'm sure you guys want during Black Friday, the biggest buying time of the year. So why not capitalize on that? Why not make it easier on yourself by downloading this free playbook? You guys can get that at handmadeandbeyond.com/Black Friday. All right, let's dive into the goods, the stuff that you want to hear about, which is how I'm messing crap up, how I'm messing up my Etsy business. I want to talk about the top mess ups, the things that I've done in my business over the years, sometimes multiple times. But also what I've learned from them and how I've corrected that so that it doesn't happen again. Even though some of these I've done more than once, it took me more than one time of doing it to really learn my lesson because sometimes I'm thick-headed. But it's important when you guys are running a business, it's important to know that you're going to screw stuff up. You're going to screw up orders. You're going to screw up communication. You're going to mess things up. So don't go into it thinking that everything's going to be perfect. Because when something goes wrong, you're like, oh crap, the sky is falling. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to give up because all these other people are doing things perfectly and they're not doing these things. I feel dumb. I feel stupid. So I'm just going to shut my business down. Don't feel that way. We all do it. Whether we want to lead on that we do it or not, I'm here to tell you that we all do it. We all mess up. We don't know everything, nor will we ever know everything. You can make great strides. You should start to learn your business and learn more of what you're doing, but you're never going to learn everything. You're going to make future mistakes. It's just best to learn from them and move on and not come back and continue to think about them and let it impact your how you're feeling or what you're going to do in the future. You can't fret on the past mistakes. You can only move on. All right, so the first mistake that I've made, and this was one of my bigger mistakes that I made a few years back, was I really messed up my variations to my listings. So my biggest selling Etsy store is selling clothing, selling apparel, shirts, graphic tees, things like that. I have a lot of variations, colors, sizes, styles. So I was using a bulk editor tool, which is Vella. Maybe you guys have heard of them. Maybe I've used them. This was before Etsy let you bulk edit stuff, so I was using Vella. Vella is still pretty good, still relevant. You can still use it for different things. So I was using that tool to bulk edit variations, to change the variations on a huge, huge chunk of my listings. Well, I went through and made those changes, thought that everything was updated. Turns out it deleted every single one of my variations. So customers could not choose the size, nor could they choose the color. So what happened, I didn't realize it happened. I didn't double check it. I should have. Lesson learned. So people were going, and still surprisingly, they were submitting a good amount of orders for shirts and tank tops where they did not even know the color or the size. I don't get why they didn't message me and say, hey, I want to order this, but I can't pick the color or the size, because it was clear in the description and the pictures that that was something that they had to do. So they were submitting orders. So finally, by the time I caught it, I had probably 20 orders that had no color, no size. And not to mention however many other orders that people did not submit because that information wasn't in there. Usually if it's not in there, people aren't going to order and they just move on to the next shop. So I was shocked to see that there was that many orders where people just submitted stuff willy-nilly without a color or the size or a size. Very weird. So I had to go back and message every single one of those people multiple times sometimes to get that information. A lot of people you'll find, which is weird, they never respond to you when you're trying to ask them for some type of information about their order, whether they order wrong, which happens a lot with personalized items. They submit it, they don't follow instructions, they order it wrong, and then you have to chase them down to figure out what they want within the scope of what you sell. So that was a huge headache, a huge problem. I had to go back and fix all those listings. But the lesson I learned was if you're going to make bulk changes, do it to a small group first and then go back and check it. Don't just let it ride and then have to clean up that huge mess later. So that was a disaster. Crisis averted. There was no unhappy customers. I fixed it. I was able to make contact with all of them, thankfully. If I wasn't able to make contact with them, really the only thing that you can do is cancel their order, because you're not going to send out something, you should never send out something and guess what they want. That especially when it comes to clothing. But I would just say across the board, don't just assume. You got to make contact with these people. If they never respond, it's not really your fault at that point. You can try a couple of times, and then hopefully they respond, and then you can correct it and move on. So that was the biggest mistake, number one. The other one, and this is an infuriating mistake, not only to me, but more so to the customer, is when you mix up orders. You send the wrong orders to the wrong customers. This is something that I've done quite a few times, and it is not a fun thing to deal with. One customer basically gets someone else's order, and the other customer gets that person's order. So it is disaster. People are usually very, very PO'd to get someone else's order, especially when they're probably excited to get what they wanted, and they're getting someone else's order. It's wrong. Most customers are very unhappy about that. How that happens is when I print out the labels, all labels print out at once, and then I print out the packing slips, all those packing slips print out at once, and then I have to put them together. So I have two piles. Usually how I do my workflow, or before how I did my workflow, was I was putting the packing slips on the mailers, grabbing that, grabbing the shirt or the tank top, putting it with that, and then grabbing the next packing slip. But they're not in order. When you print them out that way, they're not always in order with how Etsy prints them out, because especially if someone does gift packaging slips, that prints out last, so it messes up the order of things. So you can't just do one and one, put them together. You got to read the name of both and put them together to make sure and verify that the names are the same. I would just get in the swing of things, and after you do so many, your eyes glaze over and you just start grabbing them without reading both names, and that was a mistake on my part. So I've changed my workflow. Now what I do is I print them both out, I put the labels on all the packing slips, and then I go through and match the packing slip with the mailer and create that pile of them together. I don't keep them separate. I put them together first, and then I package everything. A little bit more time, but it prevents me from messing up and switching orders, which I've done. This is one of the things I've done a couple of times, and before I learned my lesson, because I was like, oh, next time I'll just pay closer attention. And then I do it again, and customers get really, really upset when they're getting someone else's order. Usually got to send them a replacement order, mail return label to send the items back, and then sometimes if they're really upset, I give them a discount as well. Lesson learned there, as well as some solutions on how to handle it. You got to send them the new one right away, give them a mail return label, prepaid, and then sometimes also a discount. Usually you can tell by the tone of their voice how upset they are, and by that you can really kind of go over the top with your solutions to hopefully prevent them from leaving a bad review. And I think there's been only one person that's left me a bad review still from switching their order out. And you just got to be apologetic, super apologetic, and then just make it right away. And usually people are understanding. They understand that things happen, and they'll kind of change their tune as long as you make it right. All right. So the other thing that brings us to the next mess up, because I'm full of them, is sending items to the wrong address or sending out the wrong variations of items after the customer let me know that what they ordered was incorrect. So this basically is my mistake. Customer says, "Oh, I have my old address. Please send it to the new address," and then I still send it to the old address. Or a customer's like, "Oh, I want a small," or "I want a red instead of a green," and I still send them the other size or the other color. And that's very infuriating to the customers too, because they're like, "I told you that it was wrong. I told you that I didn't want that," and then you still send it to them. So I've done that a few times. The way around that, the lesson that I've learned from doing that is, as soon as they let you know of that update, go in and add a private note on the order. So when you're printing that out, you're going through and you're making your list of stuff to fulfill, or you're printing out the packing slips, you can see that private note on there of what they wanted, what corrections they wanted made. And you can even have it print out that private note on the packing slip, which I usually do now. For one, so I can see it when I'm packaging the order, but two, the customer can see that change was made and that change is reflected on the packing slip, because it'll have the normal stuff on the original order and then it'll have whatever you put in the private note. Just be careful. Don't add stuff in your private note that you don't want customers to see, or stuff that's, um, stuff that's mean or whatever. Because if you accidentally have it on the packing slip and send it to them, they're going to see that. So I just put it straightforward, new address, or small instead of medium, or red instead of green, something like that. So it shows up as that note on the bottom of the packing slip, and then the customer will get it and they see that you've made that change and it's reflected on the packing slip as well. So just make sure, because I used to do it and be like, okay, I had to remember to update it when it's time to ship. You never remember to update it when it's time to ship. You always freaking forget, and then you send it out and you're like, crap, I did it again. Your memory is not as good as you think it is, or at least mine's not. So I need some ginkgo biloba to make sure that I'm staying on top of this stuff. But just, yeah, don't leave anything to chance. Just make sure you're putting those notes on there so you're not messing that stuff up. It's really, really easy to do. All right, last but not least, having checks and balances to make sure your stuff is going out in the appropriate quality that your customers expect. I've sent out clothing before that I didn't check, that I got from a manufacturer, that had holes in it, stains in it. So just make sure you're doing a final check on your item before it is shipped out, because some of you guys are making your stuff, you don't make every aspect of it. There are components that you're getting from manufacturers, from suppliers, so there may be imperfections. So just make sure you're doing that checks and balances, checking all sides before you're sending it out to customers, because if they find it, it's going to be a different story than when you find it and you send it out, or correct it and then send it out. So quality is important, especially with Etsy. Customers expect high quality items. That's why they're coming to Etsy. That's why they're willing to spend a little bit more usually for quality, for handmade quality items. Not something that you'd find, on Amazon super cheap, or on Wish that's 18,000 sizes too small. Low quality type stuff. Etsy is known for higher quality handmade items. So just doing that final check before you send stuff out, just to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it, that there's no imperfections, because there's nothing worse than getting that message saying that something's wrong with it, or even worse than that, getting a review with a picture of the what's wrong with the item. That is a killer. That's super, super killer to get that, because customers will see that review, they'll see that picture, and immediately think that if they buy from you, they're going to get the same low quality. So quality is super, super important, and there's ways to avoid it. Sure, things will slip through the cracks. Sure, things will break after the fact. So it's up to you on how to handle that stuff. I had customers say, well, I washed this and then the seam came apart. I'll replace that. Not my fault. I didn't make it, but I'm still going to make it right for them. because if you do, those customers will come back. They'll remember that. They'll refer you to other people because they were treated well. They'll treated nice because customers remember how well they were treated, but even more so, they really remember if they were treated bad, and they will go out of their way to be a bad advertisement for you. And that's what we don't want. So we want to treat everyone well and do what we can within reason to make things right. Some people you're never gonna make it right. You're never gonna make it better, and you just have to accept that fact after you try and just move on. But the overwhelming majority of people, you can make it right. You can make them happy because most people are understanding and cool. Always, you're gonna have that group that's not, and that's fine. They can go live their life and be hateful and mean and wallow in their own pit of despair on their own. Those aren't our demographic of people. Those are the people that we're going to not focus on. But that's it, guys. That is my mess up episode. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I'm sure I'm going to make a lot more mistakes in the future, and I'll be happy to bring those to you guys so that you know you're not alone. Don't be afraid of messing up. Learn from it. Move on. It's part of the journey. It's part of the experience, and you just have to embrace it, sometimes laugh at it, and then continue on your day with your business. So, all right, guys, that is it for today's episode. Again, make sure you download the Black Friday Playbook. I want you guys running killer Black Friday sales, and getting a nice boost during Black Friday, so you guys can get that at handmadeandbeyond.com/Black Friday. I can't say it right. /Black Friday. There it is. There it came out. See, I'm still messing up. I can't talk sometimes. I fumble over my words. Whatever. All right, guys. I will talk to you soon. I'll be back with another really good episode for you. Have an amazing rest of your day and week.